Okay. Good morning, all of you. Today we are going to have a very interesting case presentation on the topic leptospirosis. So first I will be discussing a case which was a real case admitted and how we managed. And then after that, I will be discussing the theory of in leptospirosis, the etiology, the pathogenesis, the clinical features, the complications, everything will be discussed in detail. Hope I'm audible. Let's go to the class. So now this is a 18-year-old boy who was admitted with the chief complaint of 3-day history of fever. So for 3 days, this person has an undocumented fever, a myalgia, headache, abdominal pain, decreased appetite and activity, and he took paracetamol for two times, and no consultation was done in this 3-day interval. After 2 days, the persistence was there for the above symptoms, and reduced urine output was there with yellow-orange in color, and there was calf pain. So initially he has like a fever, myalgia, headache, abdominal pain, and persistence of the above symptoms the next 2 days with reduced urine output. Then again there was persistence of the above symptoms a day back, but along with that there was lower abdominal pain and vomiting, and the urine output fell. It was only less than a ml, and last few hours he was totally anuria, and he was coming to the casualty. Now what was the review of his symptoms? So generalized symptoms that the child had only body ache and decreased appetite. There was no weight loss, no chills, no fatigue. In the skin, the child had jaundice, and the neck and the head, he had headache and dizziness. In the eyes, he had icterus, which is present. And ears, there was no hearing problem, no itching of the ears. Mouth and throat was normal. Respiratory system was also normal. So according to our systemic review, the child had generalized body weakness and decreased appetite. Child had jaundice, child had headache and dizziness, and child also had icterus. There were no cardiac symptoms present. GIT also, like there was no pain, no anorexia, vomiting, melena, constipation, excessive bleeding, bloating, loss of appetite or abdominal pain and diarrhea. Renal, the child was anuric. Literally, there was no urine output. And genitalia was normal. Musculoskeletal system had joint pain and muscle pain in the calf. Hematological was normal. Endocrine was the child not have any endocrine features as well. So this was a review of symptoms. From review of symptoms, you know that there's jaundice, there is icterus, there is headache and dizziness, there is anuria, and there is joint pain and muscle pain. So past medical history, no, nothing was convenient. So he was completely immunized. Family history, there's no history of hereditary diseases, no history of TB, asthma, TB, or diabetes mellitus or cardiac disease. The patient is staying with his father and 2 siblings in a well-lit, well-ventilated bungalow wooden house with own pour-flush toilet. Garbage is collected 2 to 3 times a week. Drinking water is tap water, and no history of travel. Now, the patient lives with his father with his 2 siblings. That is the first H. Next, he stops schooling. Education is he stops schooling by grade 10. Next is your A. He accompanies his father during fishing and usually plays basketball during free time. And D, there is no history of illegal drugs. And no sexual experience, no suicidal ideation. Physical examination, the child is awake, conscious, coherent, ambulatory, GCS is 15, in cardiorespiratory distress with the following vital signs. His BP was very low. He was having hypotension. It is only 50 upon 30. Pulse rate is 98 beats per minute. The respiratory rate is 85 and the temperature is 37. Skin. The skin is brown in complexion, no pallor, mild jaundice, no lesions are there. Normal skin turgor is there. Multiple scars on bilateral lower extremities is present. No areas of balding. Head and neck ENT examination we want to see. No balding, no swelling, no tenderness in the head. Eyes, there are pale palpable conjunctiva. There is icteric sclera. Conjunctival suffusion is there. No cataract and no asymmetry. Ears at level with the lateral canthus of the eyes, symmetrical, non-tender with no erythema, no discharges, no scaling. Nose, nasal mucosa is pink, patent nares, non-deviated septum and no nasal discharge, non-tender sinuses are there. Mouth, it is pinkish lips, buccal mucosa is pink, no ulcer, dry lips, chest and lungs, Symmetrical chest wall expansion is there. No intercostal or subcostal retraction. No tenderness. Normal resonant breathing sound. Heart, it's an adynamic precordium. Apex beat at 5th intercostal space. Left to the mid-clavicular line. No thrills. No loud palpable P2. Normally split S2. No S3, no S4. Normal heart rate and no murmur. But the child is tachycardic. So as you can see, the child is having dry lips tachycardia. Abdomen examination is absolutely normal. Musculoskeletal, there is a tender gastrocnemius muscle. The calf muscle is very tender. No bone or joint deformity. No joint swelling. Extremities, full pulse is there. Warm extremities are there. CRT is less than 2 seconds. No cyanosis, no edema. Neurological involvement, the child is conscious, coherent, oriented to 3 spheres, follows the command. GCS is 15. The rest of the neurological examinations were unremarkable. So what are the salient features of our case? It's an 18-year-old male child, history of wading in the flood, fever for 3 days, headache, reduced urine output, vomiting and loose stools, abdominal pain and calf pain. And there is hypotension. On our examination, child is hypotension, child is having tachycardia, there is signs of dehydration, child is having icteric sclera, child is having conjunctival suffusion, multiple scars on the lower extremities and tenderness on the gastrocnemius muscle. Admitting diagnosis is to consider leptospirosis. Course in the ward. Now this child was admitted in the pediatric intensive care unit under green service. So for your diagnostic, you send your routine CBCs, your blood typing, blood urea creatinine, and serum electrolytes were sent, AST, ALT, PT, APDT, blood culture, dengue test, leptospira test, chest X-ray, everything was sent. And we are going to start line 1 and line 2. Penicillin was given, started. 2 million units was given. You're going to refer to the nephro unit because there is a complete renal shutdown. You're going to monitor your vitals every 1 hour. And you have to keep monitoring. You're going to hook the patient to norepinephrine because of the low blood pressure. And possible, the seriousness was explained to the mother, and you have to give face mask oxygen and you have to give a dopamine drip. After that, the BP has improved after the initial resuscitation. Urine output is still negative. And the child has been now given metalazone and furosemide. Nephrology notes the BP is 100/50, neck vein is distended, desaturated. You're giving furosemide now. For now, you have to send the blood for hepatitis B and C. And then still the tachypnea is present. For the intubation purpose, condition is well explained and your repeat chest X-ray is being done. On day 2, the child still is having labored breathing, distended neck veins and crackles are present. And oxygen you are still delivering. And your medical orders are still norepinephrine drip is going on, dopamine drip is going on. And for hemodialysis, 1 more catheter is being inserted. So your femoral vein is being catheterized and you have to proceed to hemodialysis. So hemodialysis order will be for 2 hours duration. Blood flow will be 25 ml per minute and dialysate flow will be 400 per hour. Ultrafiltrate will be 500 per hour. Follow this with the hepatitis profile. At 2:33, now the child is desaturating. And CPR is started and pronounced clinically dead. Now, what is your working expression in this child? You're having septic shock, you're having acute kidney injury, probably secondary to leptospirosis. Your final diagnosis is pulmonary hemorrhage with Weil's disease, which is hepatorenal syndrome of leptospirosis. Unfortunately, the child couldn't be saved because the child has come with profound shock and the child went into hemorrhage. Now, the case management and treatment. Now we'll go to the theory of leptospirosis. This is the child we lost, but still we have so much to learn from this child. First is here, how does leptospirosis present? Human leptospiral infection can occur when the mucous membrane and skins are contacted by the urine and of the infected animal and upon ingestion of contaminated water. So basically, rat is the principal source of human infection. Leptospirosis is endemic in the Philippines and a number of cases peak during the rainy months of June and August. Even in India, it is like that. Outbreaks have been associated with wading in flood waters. So this is how the bacteria looks like. It is a spirochete, as you see. It's a spirochete. Most important zoonotic disease in the world is your leptospirosis. It is caused by the Leptospira species, which is an obligate aerobic bacteria with motile, tightly coiled spirochetic appearance. There are 23 pathogenic species and 8 non-pathogenic species. So the reservoir is rodents mainly. Yeah. And transmission occurs from direct contact. So what happens is the rat, which is a carrier, is having this leptospirosis, and from rat urine, it contaminates the flood waters. So when you walk in a flood water, especially when you're having an abraded skin or some mucous membrane is there, and you're coming in contact with this infected water, it enters through direct contact from the blood, tissues, organs, and urine of infected animals. Indirect contact is by injured mucosa or skin is exposed to contaminated water or soil. Leptospirosis is common in the tropical and subtropical countries. The median incidence is more in males than females, and there is increasing incidence in everywhere. So pathogenesis, leptospirosis enter the humans through moist, abraded skin or mucous membrane, as I told you. Then it will enter the bloodstream. Now it will circulate in the bloodstream. So first of all, we finish the etiology. All of us know it is a spirochete organism, which is Leptospira species. How it is going to enter is through your abraded skin or mucous membrane. Now it goes and circulates in the bloodstream. The primary lesion is damage to the endothelial lining of the blood vessels with ischemic damage to the liver, kidneys, and meninges and muscles. So after entering the bloodstream, it is going to go to the small blood vessels and cause endothelial lining damage, where all it is going to cause mainly the liver, then the kidney, then the meninges, and then muscles. So you will have hepatic manifestations, renal manifestations, CNS manifestations, and muscle will have a lot of pain. Now, leptospirosis itself will have two phases, anictic leptospirosis and icteric leptospirosis. Anictic leptospirosis is from the first 3 to 7 days of septicemia, where there is fever, myalgia, headache, vomiting, and conjunctival suffusion. Major relief will be this. And the second phase of the anictic phase, you will have meningitis, uveitis, rash. Icteric phase is your Wheel syndrome. It will start, here you will have your jaundice, hemorrhage, renal failure, and myocarditis. So clinical manifestation, incubation period varies from 2 to 20 days. There are varied manifestations. Severity of the illness, it could be asymptomatic or a subclinical self-limited febrile systemic illness in 90% cases. And in 10% cases, there can be a life-threatening illness like jaundice, renal failure, myocarditis, hemorrhage, and refractory shock. Anictic leptospirosis, it is the initial or the septicemic phase. Here you will have abrupt onset of fever, chills, severe headache, malaise, nausea, vomiting, severe muscular pain and tenderness. Conjunctival suffusion with photophobia and orbital pain without ecchymosis and purulent exudate can be there. Hepatosplenomegaly, generalized lymphadenopathy can be there. A truncal red maculopapular rash can be there. Second, or the immune phase follows a brief asymptomatic interlude with recurrence of fever. That's why we call a biphasic fever. And there can be aseptic meningitis also in this phase. Then coming to the icteric phase or the Wheel syndrome. It is a severe form of leptospirosis affecting only less than 10% of the children. Hemorrhage and cardiovascular collapse can be there. There can be right upper quadrant pain, hepatomegaly, increasing liver enzymes, and hyperbilirubemia. There will be azotemia followed by oliguria followed by complete anuria. The clinical features which are associated with increased mortality are mainly altered mental status, respiratory insufficiency like rales and infiltrate, hemoptysis, oliguric hyperkalemic acute renal failure, and cardiac involvement in the form of myocarditis, complete or incomplete heart block, and atrial fibrillation. Now, the clinical recognition of leptospirosis. What clinical manifestations should alert a health practitioner to suspect leptospirosis among patients presenting with acute fever? Any individual presenting with acute febrile illness for at least 2 days and either residing in a flooded area or having a high-risk exposure, which is defined as wading in the floods and contaminated water, contact with animal fluids, swimming in flood water, or ingestion of contaminated water with or without cuts and wounds. So there should be 2 days fever with one of these high-risk exposure. and presenting with at least 2 of the following symptoms. It could be a myalgia, calf tenderness, conjunctival suffusion, chills, abdominal pain, headache, jaundice, or oliguria should be considered a suspected leptospirosis case. What are the locally available laboratory tests that can be used to confirm the diagnosis? Generally, it is not necessary to confirm the diagnosis or wait for the results of the test before starting treatment. The clinical assessment and epidemiological history are more important. Early recognition and treatment is more important to prevent complications of the severe disease and mortality. However, if definitive or confirmatory diagnosis is warranted in suspected cases for epidemiological and public health reasons, these are the locally available diagnostic tests. One is your direct detection method. That is culture and isolation. This remains the gold standard, but it is very time consuming, labor intensive, requires 6 to 8 weeks also for the result, needs a dark field microscopy, and is having a low diagnostic yield. It can identify the CROR but is insensitive. Next, we have the polymerase chain reaction. Has the advantage of early confirmation of the diagnosis, especially during the acute leptospiromic phase before the appearance of antibodies. Its utilization in the clinical setting is currently not generally available because of the cost-limiting nature of the test and the need for trained personnel. Next, coming to the indirect detection test, here we have your microagglutination test. This is what we commonly do. It is a 4-fold rise of the titer from acute to convalescent sera. Is a confirmatory for diagnosis. It is highly sensitive and specific, but again, it is time consuming and hazardous to perform because of the risk of exposure to live antigens. But there are also cross reactions which may occur with syphilis, viral hepatitis, HIV, relapsing fever, Lyme's disease, legionellosis, and autoimmune diseases. In endemic areas, a single titer for at least 1:1600 in symptomatic patients is indicative of leptospirosis. Then you have your specific IgM rapid diagnostic test. They are serological tests in single gene format for the quick detection of Leptospira genus specific IgM antibodies in the human sera. Sensitivity is between 63 to 72% and specificity is between 93 to 96% when tested at the illness less than 7 days. The samples are taken beyond 7 days, sensitivity improves further. Therefore, false negative results can be a problem if tests are performed during the early stage of the illness. Non-specific rapid diagnostic tests like Leptospira antigen antibody agglutination test detects Leptospira antibody in the human serum through agglutination reaction, which may persist for years. This is used as a screening test, but it is not at all sensitive. And a positive result from this test should always be confirmed with the microagglutination test. Now we finished the diagnosis. We have seen the clinical recognition of leptospirosis, and we have also seen the laboratory diagnosis of leptospirosis. Now coming to the treatment. What antibiotics are recommended for patients suspected to have leptospirosis? For mild leptospirosis, doxycycline is a drug of choice. Alternative drugs include amoxicillin and azithromycin. For moderately severe leptospirosis, penicillin G remains a drug of choice. Alternative drugs include parenteral ampicillin, third-generation cephalosporins like cefotaxime and ceftriaxone, and parenteral azithromycin dihydrate. Antibiotic therapy should be completed for 7 days, except for azithromycin, which could be given for 3 days. So for mild, it is doxycycline. For moderate to severe, it is penicillin G. Alternative will be your third-generation cephalosporins and parenteral azithromycin. What is a recommended post-exposure prophylaxis for leptospirosis? Doxycycline is a recommended post-exposure chemoprophylactic agent. The duration of prophylaxis depends on the degree of exposure and the presence of wounds. Individuals should monitor themselves for fever and other flu-like symptoms and should continue to wear personal protective measures since antibiotic prophylaxis is not 100% effective. The decision to give prophylaxis depends on the risk exposure assessment. Low risk exposure is defined as those individuals with a single history of wading in the flood or contaminated water without any wounds or cuts or open lesions. For those individuals, you can give a doxycycline 200 milligrams single dose within 24 to 72 hours of exposure. This is your grade B. Moderate risk exposure is defined as individuals with a single history of wading in the flood or contaminated water, but there is presence of wounds, cuts, or open lesions, or accidental ingestion of contaminated water. Here you will give doxycycline 200 milligrams once a day for 3 to 5 days and should be started immediately within 24 to 72 hours of exposure. Then you will have your high risk exposure, which is defined in individuals as continuous exposure, having more than a single exposure, because who are working in the flooded areas and swimming in the flooded water, especially, which are infested with the domestic or sewer rats. Here you have to give weekly once until the end of the exposure. So you have single exposure, you have continuous exposure. Single exposure without wounds and with wounds. Without wounds will be a low grade. Here you will give you a single dose. Moderate risk you will give for 3 to 5 days. Continuous exposure is high risk. Here you will give once weekly dose of doxycycline. The following antibiotics are recommended for children. So again, it is 4 milligram per kilogram per dose. Alternative drugs are azithromycin and amoxicillin. Azithromycin will be 10 mg per kg single dose and amoxicillin will be 50 mg per kg Q6 hourly for 3 to 5 days. If children are exposed for more than 7 days, the dose should be repeated after 1 week. Prophylaxis is not 100% effective. Prevention of exposure is the most prudent. You have to monitor all those who are exposed for occurrence of symptoms of leptospirosis. The early signs of infections occur between 4 to 10 days of exposure. All patients with the presumptive diagnosis of leptospirosis should be triaged under the Department of Pediatric Nephrology with the following criteria. Any child with a serum creatinine of more than 3 milligram per deciliter with presence of any one of the criteria for pulse therapy. So in emergency room, you have to receive the patient, assess the patient, identify the patient, carry out the initial orders, and then you have to start the renal replacement therapy, either in the form of hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis. You have to admit the patient on the ward. So any child with fever, conjunctival suffusion, muscle aches, history of wading in the flood waters with icterus and jaundice. You have to send a CBC with platelet count, creatinine, sodium, potassium, ABG, baseline ECG, chest PA view, PT, PTTT daily if needed, and your LAT should be 10. And if negative LAT, MAT can be done. Microscopic agglutination test. The initial management will be a fast drip of plain NS, then continuous hydration. You have to start your penicillin G at 1.5 million units IV every 6 hours, or ceftriaxone should be given. The criteria for pulse therapy will be any platelet count less than 1 lakh, any systolic BP less than 90, or even after isotonic fluid resuscitation, requiring ionodrops, lung infiltrates on chest X-ray, and prolonged PT, APTP. If it is present, then you have to give your methylprednisolone pulse therapy. You have to give 500 milligram IV after OD for 3 days. After the 3rd dose of methylprednisolone, or after any episode of hemoptysis, give cyclophosphamide 1 gram IV as single dose after the hemodialysis. Give ceftriaxone also instead of penicillin, and give omeprazole. If the patient has been started on hydrocortisone, give the remaining steroid dose to reach the target dose of methylprednisolone. Then give methylprednisolone for day 2 and day 3. How do you do the steroid conversion? 5 milligram of hydrocortisone will be equal to 1 milligram of methylprednisolone. If the patient is not having such symptoms, but the patient is requiring dialysis and the patient is having a platelet count of more than 1 lakh but less than 1,50,000, you can give only hydrocortisone. You can continue IV penicillin G and you can give omeprazole. Then renal replacement therapy. The indications for acute renal replacement therapy or dialysis are uremic symptoms, a serum creatinine of more than 3 milligram per deciliter, serum potassium of more than 5 milliequivalents per liter in an oliguric patient, ARDS, pulmonary hemorrhage, pH of less than 7.2, fluid overload state, and oliguria. Hemodialysis is preferred over peritoneal dialysis, and hemodialysis is a faster way of removal of toxins. Hemodialysis versus peritoneal dialysis, mortality is 0 versus 10%. Renal recovery time also is very, very sooner in hemodialysis, and reduction of serum bilirubin and urea creatinine is also faster in hemodialysis. The algorithm for dialysis therapy: any urine output less than 500 ml per day, or a creatinine more than 3 milligram per deciliter is present, and it fulfills any of the criteria for pulse therapy, yes, means you have to go for acute hemodialysis. If it's no, you can do acute peritoneal dialysis. So acute peritoneal dialysis, 1.5%, 1.5 liter per exchange you can do. A dwell time of 30 minutes and 40 exchanges. May use hypertonic exchange if patients needs fluid removal as well. You can also give hydrocortisone 100 milligram IVQ A6 for 3 days, and omeprazole you can start. If the child is not having such features, please ensure continuous hydration and also do your serial laboratory monitoring. If with improving creatinine, urine output and better well-being, step down the antibiotic to doxycycline 100 milligram BD on day 1 and then 100 milligram OD thereafter, or amoxicillin 500 milligram Q6 and you have to complete for 7 days. So this is your algorithm for pediatric patients. Any fever plus history of wading in flood water with non-specific signs and symptoms plus jaundice, you have to do all your labs. Outpatient or step-down management. For children more than 8 years, you can give doxycycline. For children less than 8 years, you have to give amoxicillin or azithromycin. Amoxicillin will be, so for children more than 8 years, you have to give 100 milligram of doxycycline on day 1, BD, then followed by 100 milligram OD, or 4 milligram per kilogram divided into 2 doses. For children 8 years or less, you have to give amoxicillin or azithromycin. Amoxicillin you can give 30 to 50 milligram per kilogram per day every 6 hours, or you can give azithromycin 1 gram initial dose followed by 500 mg per kg. So 500 mg, which is 10 mg per kg OD for 3 days. In inpatient care, you have to start with penicillin G, which is about 1.5 million units Q6 hourly for 7 days, or 10,000 units per kg per day in 4 divided doses. Renal adjustment, depending on the GFR, you should do. Ceftriaxone can also be given, and that is in the dose of 75 to 100 mg per kg per day. Once daily dosing you have to give, and you have to do the renal adjustment. This is your algorithm for leptospirosis in pediatric patients. There is mild leptospirosis. You have to just do a close follow-up, and you can send the patient home on home medications. There is a moderate or severe leptospirosis, like acute kidney injury and failure. You have to admit, you have to decrease the estimated GFR, increased, if there is decreased estimated GFR, increased blood urea nitrogen, and the child is non-anuric, then you have to do close monitoring. But that child is oligoanuric, then you have to go for your other things. Now the child is having decreased eGFR and increased blood urea nitrogen, and the child is euvolemic. Then you have to give only plain NS and continue for 3 more doses until euvolemic. If the child is already euvolemic, you can start the child on dopamine and norepinephrine. Then you have to look for the urine output. If the urine output is more, then you can only reassess. There is no urine output, then you have to start furosemide and again check the urine output. If the urine output is still more, you can still only adjust the IV fluid. If it is still less, and there are other features of pulmonary congestion, intractable metabolic acidosis is there, hyperkalemia is there, or ECG changes of hyperkalemia is there. After all these measures, then you will go for renal replacement therapy, peritoneal dialysis or hemodialysis will be done. What are the pulmonary complications? So pulmonary complications, incidence is 20 to 70% cases it can occur. It can consider if there is cough, hemoptysis and dyspnea. Pulmonary symptoms usually appear on the 4th to the 6th day of the illness. Pulmonary hemorrhage and acute respiratory distress syndrome are very common complications in leptospirosis. Patients with pulmonary complications usually have prolonged duration of fever, delayed antibiotic treatment, a platelet count of less than 1 lakh, serum creatinine of more than 177 micromoles per liter, and a bilirubin of more than 32.4 micromoles per liter. Now, you have to, if there is any cough, dyspnea, or hemoptysis, if it is present, then you have to give methylprednisolone and you have to do a chest X-ray. If chest X-ray is showing a bilateral pulmonary infiltrates, you have to intubate the patient and hook to a mechanical ventilator and continue your methylprednisolone pulse therapy. So this is your leptospirosis prophylaxis survey. So this is how you have to survey. And for such a severe disease, most important will be your prevention. So how will you prevent leptospirosis? So parents should always instruct children, do not wade or swim in flood waters. If exposure to flood waters is unavoidable, please wear protective gear such as boots, goggles, overalls, and rubber gloves should be used. All food and drinking water should be protected against contamination. Fresh vegetables and fruit should be washed in previously boiled or clean water and then cooked or peeled. Boil drinking water for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Physical filtration to ceramic or charcoal filters is not adequate at all for leptospirosis. Always the water should be boiled. Food should be protected against rodent attack or contamination. If children are exposed to flood waters, antibiotic prophylaxis may decrease occurrence of clinical disease and mortality. Prophylactic antibiotics should be given under supervision of a physician who can give advice regarding the effects, precautions, and contraindications of these medications. These are my references. So just to capture it all you need to know about leptospirosis is that this slide. Yes. How will you suspect leptospirosis? And if it's a clinically less severe form, you can do OPD-based management with doxycycline or azithromycin. And if it's a very severe form, you have to admit the patient and start on penicillin G. Other drugs will be IV azithromycin or ceftriaxone. So it's a very, very important topic. It's very extensive also. So RAT, you should remember, that is very, very much associated. If you have any doubts regarding this presentation, please let me know. I'll wait for some time. Any doubts, anybody? I hope all of you got a very clear understanding of leptospirosis. I think we will end the session. Thank you.